Since I was a child, I had been telling myself that I was not athletic, that I was not physical, and that I was not strong. I never played sports in school. Actually, back when I was in school, that really wasn't an option much for girls and women. And most of my life, I have struggled with being overweight. At one point, I actually weighed close to 190 pounds. And I would kind of go up and down with that. But countless times, I would declare, I am going to lose weight. Actually, I wouldn't necessarily declare that out loud to other people, but I would say it to myself. And along with that, I would say, I better do some exercise. So I would find myself going out and buying some piece of equipment, maybe a treadmill or stretchy bands, maybe it was only a video, or I would sign up for a class. And I would be diligent. I'd be on that treadmill every single day for a week. Maybe for a month, but then something would happen. My knee would start hurting, or I'd be traveling and it was just too much to bother with, or I'd just kind of lose interest and I would stop. And then I would go months or years, and then I would declare, I need to lose weight. I better exercise some. And all of that same cycle would start again. My story was that I was not physical. I was not athletic. I was not strong. And really, my life kind of reflected that. Now, if I was talking about spiritually or mentally or emotionally strong, yes. But my body, no. And I really bought into that story. Being strong belonged in someone else's story. Then 4 years ago, everything changed. Actually, my 4th year anniversary was on Sunday, December 29th. So in December, 4 years ago, my husband, Phil, poet and extraordinaire, my husband, Phil, he had, as a Christmas gift, he asked me, would I like to have 10 sessions with Corey? And I said, yes. Now, I need to tell you another fact about me, especially in the area of exercise. I was shocked that I said yes, kind of instantaneously. My old habit would have been to go away and think about it. I'd make a list, pros and cons. I really should. I would probably lose weight. It'd probably be good for me. I'd probably have more energy. And on the other side, but I don't want to do that. I'd probably injure myself. I don't have time for it. I'm not physical. I'm not strong. And I would weigh these back and forth. And while I was doing that, I'd be hoping that Phil would have forgotten that he had offered me this gift. But for some reason, a gift of grace is the way that I look at it. I just flat out said yes. I didn't know it at the time, but this was the start of a very important new story for me. Now, Phil has always been in good shape. We've been together for almost 33 years now, and when I met him, he was the racquetball champion of North Carolina. He plays golf, he's ridden his bike up to Craggy Gardens, and it's just a part of him. He was the athlete. He was the strong one in our family. And it was in 2009 that Phil read an article about CrossFit, and he thought he'd give it a try. Well, after his first class, he came home dragging. He was practically pulling, and he was already in good shape, pulling himself up the stairs. But he had this great big old smile on his face. And for 2 weeks, I kept hearing about these grueling workouts with this smile on his face. And he said, Connie, you ought to come down and watch a class. Well, I'm very supportive of Phil, and I instantly said, sure. I remember a cold day. It was down on Cox Avenue, this tiny little black box of a place. It was so small that I had to walk up a few steps and stand in the loft to watch this class. Becca was there, and Seth and Jana, but what I remember most is this grunting and groaning, and people were sweating and yelling and looking out over this sea of sweat. I thought to myself, I would never do this. I sure am happy for Phil, but I would never do this. Well, it was a few days later that Phil said, you want a gift and work out with Corey? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I've been coming to CrossFit twice a week now since then, on Mondays and Thursdays. And just a few days ago, I committed to 3 days a week. I'm upping it here for myself. And when I'm out traveling, I try to find CrossFits where I am. And I've actually, Phil and I went to one down in Australia and one in New Zealand. I really recommend that out in Boulder, up in around Chicago area. If there's no CrossFit box I can get to, I'm at the hotel and going up and down the steps, on that fire escape steps, or I'm in the room doing plank burpees. And I'm really reshaping myself, both internally and externally. And as I'm doing that, I'm reshaping the story that I tell about myself and my experience in life. You know, if I'm walking up to a stage and it's 1.5 feet or 2 feet tall, I just put my foot up and I step up onto it. All these farmer carries, I'm now able to kind of lift my suitcase pretty much easily. Not too long ago, Phil and I did a hike up Bearwalla Mountain. I didn't have to stop once to catch my breath or to rest. Just going right up there. I have joined the ranks of those physically fit. But, thank you. But you know, I found that even as we root out these false stories that we're telling ourselves, we also have to contend with all the stories that our culture tells us. All the things that we take for true. A big one of those is that as we age, our bodies are going to deteriorate. Now, you can get out and walk, we hear, or maybe your diet can be a little bit better. You can take some drugs, some kind of prescription drugs, and you know, maybe you'll get through it. But basically, the bottom line is, well, you're just going to be going downhill, and that's just the way it is. That is an untrue story. And we hear it everywhere. Everywhere we turn. Often it's from family and friends. And it's certainly in the media. That story is reinforced over and over again. That's what we hear. Now, most people in the Western world believe that story. So it is so reinforcing for us. And I don't deny that our bodies do change as we age. You know, a flower does not stay as a bud. It blossoms, it has color, and eventually it dies. And the same is true of our bodies. But we have this, I know this as an absolute fact, we have this enormous potential that a lot of our older people are not tapping into because they believe this other story as truth. And then it's kind of reflected in their lives, and then they see more of it, and then it's reflected in their lives, and that's the way that they walk through life. I really know from my own experience that that is a false story. But as we're trying to kind of adjust to that story, we're going upstream. We're really going against the current. And that's one of the many things about CrossFit and the community that gathers here, is that we're so encouraging. We're encouraging to each other to go against that current. And we got the strength to go against that current. And it can be daunting to do that, though, I think. But the rewards are really immeasurable. Actually, with CrossFit, they are measurable. So, especially with Corey's new machine, we can measure everything. So that helps too. So, but now there are aspects of my story that I'm still really working on. Aspects that have been negative in my life. I've realized that I have had a real resistance to change. About 3 years ago, Corey announced to us silver fitters that he was going to change the way he was doing things, that instead of classes, we were going to go to individual workouts. I cried for 3 days. And I realized later it was because I was deeply scared that everything I'd been doing would go away in a puff of smoke if I made a change. So now I'm still dealing with that. You know, when I've been aware though now and watching it, but I can see when there's a change or something's coming, it's like, oh, wait a minute, you know. And then I have to go back in and realize, oh, that's okay. Other parts of my life I can change, but it's this place that for 60-something years I told myself I was not strong and not physical. So when something starts, some part of the ego thinks that, oh, that's going to be jeopardized, something's going to change, you might, might just go right back to those old habits. But I'm really shifting that story as well. And today I am here to tell you I'll be 67 in about 20 days. And I am the strongest, I'm the most fit that I've ever been in my life. I'd worked my way up to a size 16, 18. Now I'm a size 10. I like that. I'm a 10. And I find it really helpful too to remember that this is not a new part of me that somehow got grafted on to this body. This is who I've always been. This part of me has just been inside me, waiting for me to change that story, waiting for me to welcome it out. So I feel like, the timing is just perfect on it, because this is right when it could flower. So I'm investigating, though, the other limitations, the other stories that I find myself telling myself in other areas. So I'd like to kind of invite you to also consider what untrue stories you might be telling yourself. Now, most of you here, maybe you are really comfortable with being physical. Maybe you've been pretty much fit your whole life, maybe a few in and out